Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Meetup with MeLa. I have a special guest today named Carrie Sackett, and she's actually joining us for our relationship series in the month of February. So I'm really excited to have Carrie aboard today. And our topic of today is how are we doing? But first, I would like to again introduce Carrie. She is the founder of ZPD Coaching. And Carrie, if you'd like to start us off and just tell us a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Melissa. I'm
Oh, thank
thrilled
you.
to be doing this with you, and especially in the month of February.
Yes.
And so I founded ZPD Coaching. I am a social therapeutically trained life and relationship coach. But I've also spent a number of years out of the coaching chair and in the corporate world and as a nonprofit executive. And what I focus on is helping people build better relationships.
Yes.
So I'm so happy that we get to do that together today and talk
No,
about it.
definitely, definitely. And as we know, I mean, we're obviously designed to be very social beings, and relationships are basically such a pivotal part of our worlds and who we are and how we define ourselves in society. So definitely, I know that your expertise and skill set is very much welcomed, and thank you so much for being here. I do want to call attention to the fact that we do have a rolling screen at the bottom, I guess you'd say, and basically just a scrolling banner. And it does have your information here as well, Carrie, as well
Mhm.
as my social media contacts at Meetup with MeLa, the Facebook page, as well as my Instagram. And Carrie, you've provided your website as
Mhm.
well, which is www.coachingzpd.com. So
Mhm.
definitely, I encourage people to check that out as well. Carrie has an amazing website, and again, you can find us on this episode will be on our Meetup with MeLa, my Meetup with MeLa YouTube channel, and as well
Mhm.
as some other platforms as well for the audio version. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in today to all of our listeners and viewers, and thank you again, Carrie, so much for being here. So
Mhm.
we've had some great conversation prior to this, and we
Mhm.
wanted to just talk about at this point, thinking about once again, relationships being what they are. And, unfortunately, we're still in a pandemic, but basically, our topic today is how are we doing? And I think about that for so many couples and how my initial thought is how they've had to transition during this time of complete change. Roles may have had to change significantly throughout the pandemic in regards to what partners are doing, how they're doing it, the spaces that they're sharing. So I know that you work with individuals, Carrie, as well as couples. And so, what are some of the things that you're finding? How are things changing? What's still the same? And any
Yeah.
suggestions that you have are definitely appreciated.
Well, COVID, it's been a very trying time for all of us in different ways, uh, and in the world, in America. And one of the things about living through COVID is that we're coming up against some of the limits of the ways we usually do things.
Yes,
So, part of how I see that in my work with couples, I also lead groups and I do individual work. And part of that is that our common assumption, one way people think about relationships, and particularly marriage or partnerships,
hmm,
is, a scale. I'm keeping track. You took the garbage out twice this week, and I cleaned the kids' room once this week, and therefore I'm down one, and it's my turn to do something.
hmm.
And and um, and maybe that works when we're out having busy lives and we're only home for a few hours a day. But then you get home and you're with your kids and you're working from home, and um, it's trying to keep track and count of those things is can lead to a lot of frustration.
Oh, absolutely.
So what I work with my clients to do is move away from that way of seeing a relationship, of keeping score and uh,
Definitely.
and weighing whose turn for what, and to take a look at how are we doing?
Yes.
What do we need? What does the relationship need
Yes.
today, in the moment when you're about to, really get angry at each other, but also in general, as you look
Yes.
at the span of your relationship and
Mm-hmm.
how you've grown or not, and where you want to go? What do you need in order to grow your relationship? So I love that you've called this our session, How Are We Doing? Because I
Yes.
think there's something in a relationship that's called the relationship. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that's bigger than just the people, the individuals in the relationship.
Definitely. And I think, again, I think it's so much about, this might just be an opportunity to check in. I think, we've come off of a year, 2020 had been trying in so many different ways for so many people. It was, quite frankly, I mean, I guess we can all sort of say it was just negative. And I think the thing about it is we can all probably agree on that, no matter where we're coming from, our
Yeah.
experiences. I mean, just in terms of COVID, obviously being a big thing, but we've just had a lot of social unrest. We've had just a lot of different experiences,
Yeah.
and people have been affected in so many different ways. And I definitely wanted this podcast to even just be a check-in of, how are we doing as couples? How are we doing individually? Are we at a point where we're able to, take a little bit of a breath and just really just do an assessment of where are we at this point? Where
Mhm.
do we see ourselves going? What did we learn what have we learned maybe about ourselves,
Yeah.
about our relationships? Um,
Yeah.
and where are we going at this point? So just trying to take stock in an assessment. And because again, I think, it can be I think we can't, diminish that it could be very traumatizing. The last year could have been very
Yeah.
traumatic and traumatizing and
Absolutely.
triggering, and for many people. And I think this might be a point, if you're at that point, to just sort of assess and see where we can sort of pivot our efforts, or just sort of take stock in where we're at this point. So I certainly appreciate you
Yeah.
here and helping us sort of guide our way in terms of maybe even potentially, some of the questions or ways that we can start that process.
Well, I think what you're saying is really important. And I think the in your face negativity and challenges of this year is forcing us to discover new ways
Yes.
of building, creating, living our lives with others. If we can see something in all of our failures,
Yes.
societally, as a couple, as a family,
Mhm.
and if we can create some new ways of doing and being and building new kinds of conversations, that's the pathway to growth. And I think that more and more people are saying, gee, the old way of doing things, it's not working anymore. I'm not
No.
happy. What else is out there? And part of what I love about social therapeutics and what I do as a coach is that I relate to people as creators and builders of their lives.
That's beautiful. Yes. I think that's such a great way for us to think about that.
And when you and that's not a mental trick. So it takes work to get there,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
we're organized. We're so much more organized to be consumers of things. There's a lot of pressure to follow a script. What's a good
Yes.
wife? What's a good husband? What's a good partner? Who's a good
Hmm.
parent?
Absolutely.
And so I work a lot with my clients on coming to see where they are now.
Hmm. Yes.
And again, you that's kind of hard, because there's
Yes.
all things going on in our world that organize us not to see where we are. We're looking at how do we get to that perfect relationship, or there's
Yes.
other things that go on that get in the way.
Hmm. And the expectations, and like you said, I mean, the
Yeah.
expectations that are set up in our societal norms, and like we have to be married by this point, and we have to have,
Yeah.
what is it, like 1.5 kids, right? Or
Yeah.
2.5 or whatever it is. It's like, and just boy and a girl, and how far apart, and this. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
times it just creates this unneeded pressure of, when you're not on that path, or you're not hitting those benchmarks, it just sort of feels like, where am I at? Am I not being successful in the life that I should be living? And I think a lot of times too, I feel like one of the big questions that has come up in the past year is just, am I contributing in the way that I want to my society around me?
Mhm.
Am I doing enough? Am I being who I'm meant to be? Is there some things that I haven't done that I'm really meant to do? So I think, again, it's about, not taking certain things for granted, but realizing we're all responsible for sort of steering our own ship in the direction that we feel is most appropriate for us. And that can be hard because it's not necessarily always aligned with what the expectations are for ourselves and what others might think
Yes.
as well.
Yes. I think what you're talking about here is one of the ways that maybe more at a societal level we're starting to look at this whole play, if you will, like a theatrical play, and
Yes,
say, I don't know if I want to be in that play. And how do I,
yes.
and then, well, how do we create some new play? And this is the social in the social therapeutics that I practice, because the discoveries that we've made, social therapeutics has been around about 40 years. And interestingly, even there's now scientific evidence to this point,
Hmm.
we are social beings.
Yes.
And just as the emotional pain that we're in has been created socially because we live in
Hmm.
the world, the cure to emotional pain or the pathway to emotional growth is also social.
Okay.
This is why I lead groups, because groups are a powerful way for people to come together, people from all walks of life. That's how I do my
Yes.
groups. They're multiracial, they're multi-class, they're from people across the country. By now we're all on video. So we
Yes.
can do that, we can come together. And so the cure is in building something together with others. That's what helps us answer the questions that you were just asking. You were asking the
Hmm.
I questions. Am I doing
Yes.
this the way I want to? Am I doing this good enough? Well, it turns out that trying to answer those questions as an I makes it harder to
Yes.
grow and to discover what
Yes.
you need, what you want. We do
Yes.
that much more growthfully with others. We can do more with others.
That makes sense. And I think it's also, sometimes I think that's probably why it makes sense when we have a problem or different questions. We're bouncing those ideas off of other people that may have, similar experiences or maybe even very different point of views, just to get
Yeah,
some different perspectives that we can't
yeah,
see. We always have a blind spot.
yeah.
I mean, we don't know what we don't know. We can't see what we don't know. And we
Yes,
can't have experience that we haven't had. But by talking to others, we're getting some different perspectives and ideas that we just can't do by
yes.
ourselves. So
So,
that makes
so
sense.
in my work with couples, part of what that looks like is one person will say something to the other person and
Okay.
already know how the other person's going to respond, or
Yes.
be ready for the judgment from the spouse, or
Yes.
be ready. So it turns out that if you slow down that conversation, and this is, I'm part of the relationship in our couples work.
Yes.
I get invited in to help couples see differently and unpackage some of those really hard conversations. So
Yes.
you could say, well, um, the other person says, well, you're making me feel badly. And then you unpack that and you say, really, well, what was your wife saying that was making you feel badly? And then you discover that that wasn't the intent of it wasn't intended to make you feel badly, or it wasn't
Ex-
about you.
yes.
And then as people grow, you can start to build on what your partner is saying and grow with it rather than assuming you know what the other person said.
Hmm. That makes perfect sense. And I was also thinking of that, just our intent sometimes. Like, again, I think most people, I think, have really good intentions and when we're
Yeah.
communicating and trying to connect with others. But we know that there's times where we're completely missing the
Yeah.
messaging. We're missing the messaging. We're thinking we're explaining it perfectly. There's, misconceptions, there's
Right.
miscommunications that occur, and unfortunately can really lead to some serious breakdowns in
Mhm.
relationships, either being established or fostered or sustained. And I think that's huge, because I think when you're saying about having this group setting, it's also like I I think of myself as being perceived in the world as in a certain way, and sometimes you can actually find that no, actually, people are actually experiencing you very differently than
Yeah.
maybe what you're even intended to be or
Yeah.
do. Or so I think that's also, I'm sure that's probably something that so you're used to seeing.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of times we're in our own heads and we have certain experiences that maybe we're thinking, when I walk in a room, everyone's focused on my weight, and it's like actually nobody even noticed that. What people are actually focused on
Yes.
is the way that
Yes.
you're maybe talking to people, or
Yeah.
the different things. And so I
Mm.
think there's so much of I'm wondering, like, in your group settings, is it the fact that people are able to give each other some honest feedback in terms of how people are perceived? And
Mhm.
I would also assume, coming to that group, people have to be very prepared to hear like some constructive criticisms
Yeah.
and be able to build off of that for growth and
Yes.
development.
Well, I'll answer the first thing first, and then I'll go back to what I would call creating the environment.
Okay.
So yes, in my couples work, in group work, and even in individual work, there, people. I'll have a client who will say, "I'm not good enough.
Yes.
I'm not a good enough. I'm not a good enough mother. I'm not a good enough wife. I don't belong here. I don't belong at my job. I don't look like everybody else. I didn't go to the
Yes.
schools everybody else went to." And in building the relationship over time, it doesn't take years, weeks, we'll say, um, we can create environments together in which it's possible for
Hmm.
somebody to give the thing that we hold so tightly, that we're so sure is who we are. It's the first place we go to when we're starting to
Yes.
feel anxious or nervous, and you can give it to the group. Let's say the group
Yes.
can be the couples work with me, the group can be the group of 8 people, the group can be the individual work, because I see everything in groups. So you
Yes.
can give that to the group to build with, to respond to. And then in that kind of environment where it's a giving, building environment, which is what we work to create, and people don't know how to do it, how could we know how to do that when we start group or start this?
Yes.
It's so you kind of are learning, doing, growing, making
Hmm.
mistakes, feeling uncomfortable all at the same time. And in all of that, we can create caring environments where people can give that thing.
Hmm.
And then the group, oh, no, you're terrific. No, what you just said wasn't horrible. It was fine. I see you, we see you as a caring person, as a person who can um, grow, who can build things, who is qualified to be in your job, who's caring in your marriage, and on and on and on and on. And that has an impact. It has an impact. It's not a cognitive trick. It's not telling oh no, you're not really like that. It's more the relationality of it. It's the building and creating and discovering in the moment with what's
Yes.
going on. And
Yes.
that's a pathway to growth.
Exactly. And how much would you even say, Carrie, like, especially just thinking of, again, like I mentioned, some of the, social unrest. And I mean, how much do our own stereotypes and biases play into, who we are? Like, I'm, a Black woman. That's who I appear to in the world. And
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of stereotypes associated with that as someone that's going to be more aggressive and you're coming to the table in a different way. So how do we
yeah,
also essentially, that is certainly a big part of who I am. I'm a woman of
yeah,
color, but also realizing, but I'm also uniquely who I am too. And
yeah,
that is part of my identity, but also stripping that down to the point that you're hoping that, first off, the people in the group or who you are participating in have the same intention and wanting to grow and learn. But
yeah,
then also realizing I also want to be seen for who I am,
yeah,
respected for who I am as a person, and some of those things of how do we learn who each other is and sort of
yeah.
separate out some of these fixed identities and
Yes,
characteristics that we have.
yes. I love what you're saying. It makes me want to add that there's something else that I do in addition to my coaching practice. I co-lead something called Uncomfortable Independent Conversations, which are really short-term 3-week groups. Dr. Raquel Holmes founded this. She's an African American colleague of mine, a scientist, and together we bring together people from across race and class lines to create conversations in which people can be seen
Yes.
and heard. And it's uncomfortable because we don't know
Yes.
what we're doing and it's
Yes.
off script. And can we create a world and develop our toolkit so that you could turn to somebody and say, I are can you say, I want to respond to what you're saying, and can you, I'm having this experience that
Mhm.
you might be seeing me through a box. Is that the case right now? Or that's not quite the right thing.
But
But
I know exactly what you mean.
can you develop your toolkit so you can say to somebody, are you seeing me in this particular way right now? That I'm not
Hmm.
sure.
Yes.
So that's a kind of open, build a conversation kind of question. Maybe
Yes.
you are. And that would be helpful for you to know. Maybe
Hmm.
you're not. And that's just the language. That is the language we're stuck with because this is the world that we've created.
That's true.
and
Yes.
we, so, but to create something new together as in families, as Americans, in the history that we have in this very conflicted history in this country, we're kind of stuck with the tools and language that we have, but it's out of that stuff that we can create new stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of some of this conflict comes in because I think people that are very well intentioned and want to learn and want to grow from a lot of these experiences.
Yeah.
I've heard people that, on all different people that are
Yes.
trying. I think so many of us are trying to connect in a different way.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
of that is not wanting to um, we don't want to be in a situation where you make it worse because now you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm saying this wrong or I'm insulting you. But at the same time, I'm trying so hard to learn
Yeah.
and connect because I don't want to be that person that's coming
Yes.
across as ignorant or stereotypical or,
Yeah.
and I find that even I teach at the medical school here in Rhode Island. And I have to say, one of the things we're having a lot of conversations about anti-racism. And a huge thing is, we have students that are white and they're like, I want to know, like, how do you best want me to address the differences, the disparities, but not coming across as I'm singling you out. I'm trying to offer the best care. I'm trying to show you that I'm
Yeah.
understanding, but at the same time, also not wanting to blanket that with
Yes.
acting like you know everything about that
Yes.
person based on what they may look like as well. And I have to say, I don't have a lot of those answers because
Yeah.
I realize it's not there is no guidebook, right? It's not like we can
Yeah.
say you say this and this person will say
Yes.
that and they'll respond in that way. Some people could be like, "What are you talking about?" You know, you're saying to me that, you see I look like this and you're going to assume that, or someone might say, "Thank you so much for actually bringing some of these conversations to the forefront so I know that we're,
Yeah.
seeing eye to eye." So it
Yeah.
definitely sounds like you're doing some amazing work in that way. And
Yeah. Well, I love what you're saying now because you just said, I don't know, but
yes,
you know.
we don't
So
know.
how come we can't say that to each other?
Yes, I don't know. Yes, exactly.
I wish we could say that as a country.
Yes,
We don't know how to move forward together.
yes, we don't, but we're going to try. But
So now,
yes,
yes, so let's build with that we
mhm,
don't know.
yes, exactly. And I
And
think there's a
yeah,
lot of I don't knows. I
yeah,
mean, we had conversation previously, and a lot of times too, I mean, bringing it back to couples, a lot of times we, again, we're thinking we want the same things. We're early, you'd go through the
yeah,
dating process and now you're married and then
yeah,
you're looking at each other like, wait a minute, I didn't know you wanted to parent like this. I didn't know you wanted to
yeah,
do this. And so it's also just saying, like, I didn't know. I might not have had the best role models or experiences or
yeah,
whatever. And I think sometimes we
yeah,
so we don't want to be vulnerable. So everyone wants
yeah,
to look like, yeah, we know. But again, I think that sometimes in thinking we know more than the other, we're creating conflict, we're shutting things down. And
yes,
sometimes it's just leaning in and just being vulnerable to that experience and realizing,
yeah,
again, you
yes.
can have the best intentions, but we don't
I love,
know. We just don't
yes,
know. And there's so much that you're not going to be
exactly.
able to plan for.
Yes, I mean, one way we talk about social therapeutics is non-knowing growing.
That's that's a good one. I'm going to use that as a tagline. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
because we do, and I think a lot of times I think the understanding is, once you hit, adulthood, you should know. Like you've been learning this whole
right,
time. You should know how to act, you should know how to date, you should know how to relate to people in a
yeah,
way that is respectful, and you should just know. And I think sometimes
yeah,
as we get older, again, we're embarrassed to say, I really don't know. I don't know. I've never
yeah,
encountered this experience before. And I think we also can't blame people or shame people
yeah,
because they haven't had certain experiences. And I think so often it's like, people even say like, oh, well, they don't know of any diversity. Well, no one can really control where they grew up, where they lived. If they didn't have certain experiences, they didn't have those
yeah,
experiences. And
yeah,
again, not to say that they didn't want those experiences, but we only know, what we were exposed to a lot of times as kids and, during the developmental processes. But at the same time, don't think we stop there. We can
yeah,
continue to, like you said, be creators and builders and constructors and architects of our own lives. And I think that's such a beautiful thing
yeah,
that you're able to really facilitate and help and assist in that process, because it will help us really actualize and hopefully grow into the people we really want to be. And that's a continued
yes,
process that will you have to constantly reiterate. I know that that's something that I try to do, something that brings me closer to the person I want to be and where I want to be every single day, even if it's reading something or connecting with someone. But definitely, I think you're doing some really great things. So I want to ask you if you have any last thoughts, and I certainly want to
mhm,
ask, if anybody, are you accepting new clients? How can
mhm,
people connect with you? Because I think you have so
yeah.
many great things going on, and I so appreciate you, even your time and being here today has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I
Oh, thank
am
you.
accepting new clients, and as the viewers and listeners have seen and heard, I do individual work. I work with couples, and I lead groups. And you can find me at www.coachingzpd.com, and that's how you can get to me. And I would love to hear from you, and I would love to be your partner in emotional growth.
And it's great because, like
That's
you
what
said,
will
you're
make a
accepting.
better world. If we could all
Exactly.
grow emotionally, we would have a better world.
Exactly, and just learn from some of our experiences and
Yes.
really foster and grow in our differences. Like
Yes,
realizing we all have something wonderful to
exactly.
contribute to this world. We all have different skill sets, and being able to build that as a gift to yourself, but also a gift to others. And I always say,
Mhm.
it's so nice if we can all just, use some of our gifts to contributing. And I mean, it would be amazing. It would definitely be an amazing place, amazing environment, and just
Yeah.
realizing, being decent to ourselves and understanding we don't have all the answers, and also realizing that in other people, they
Yes.
don't have all the answers. So I think that sort of helps us, humble ourselves in that process. But I definitely appreciate that. And again, like you said, you're doing everything virtually. So nobody has to
Yeah.
worry about geographically where they're located. As long as you have a device with a camera, I'm
Yeah.
assuming everything's a go.
Yeah.
So thank you so, so much, Carrie. I really
Melissa.
appreciate the conversation with you. I hope we can have you on again, this podcast, because I know as things continue, just to even give some people some insight, I definitely think that's amazing. So thank you so,
Fantastic.
so much. Again, viewers and listeners, please tune into the different platforms, Spotify, or the Meetup with MeLa YouTube channel. And thank you so much. And this is, again, part of our relationship series in the month of February. And this episode is How Are We Doing? So take some time to take stock in where you are, where you're at, and where you want to go. And definitely Carrie is a great resource to help you get there. So thank you so much, everyone.
Take care.
Bye bye.